Why can't they ever hear my call? William shouted into the cold emptiness of his Boston mansion. The triplets, 2 boys and 1 girl, sat silently before the blaring television, their vacant eyes fixed on images no one could translate. Music, news, laughter outside, all of it meant nothing to them. They were born deaf. Since the day his wife passed away, the house had been filled only with hollow sound. But then, one afternoon, the new maid walked in. Her hands moved gently, dancing with the rhythm. And in that moment, a miracle happened. Could those hands change the fate of an entire millionaire's family? The smell of toasted bread lingered in the air, blending with the polish of oak wood, making the place seem warmer than usual. But in truth, inside that mansion, warmth had long been extinguished. At the long table, the triplets, 2 boys and 1 girl, sat as still as little statues. They were 10 years old, yet their eyes looked older. The television in the living room blared loudly, a desperate attempt from their father to fill the void, but to them it was nothing more than meaningless waves of sound. Tiny fingers tapped against the table, not to any rhythm, as if they were trying to create a sound of their own. The kitchen door creaked open. Imani stepped in. In contrast to the heavy air, she carried with her the natural quickness of youth. She placed her phone on the counter, its screen lighting up, playing a simple children's tune, one every child would know. To the triplets, it was no different from any other noise. But what Imani did next changed everything. She raised her hands, moving them gracefully, each finger bending, each gesture drawing shapes in the air. It was sign language, the language she had learned as a child. When her mother, a deaf teacher, told her, "Hands can sing, even when ears cannot hear." At first, the children only stared. But then the girl, little Emily, arched her brows, her eyes suddenly lit. She mimicked the simple motion, clumsy like a broken dance. Her 2 brothers beside her burst out laughing, not with sound, but with trembling shoulders, with eyes that gleamed. For a fleeting moment, the heavy air of the kitchen seemed to crack open, letting true light pour in. Imani continued signing with the music, turning each lyric into drawings in the air. Slowly, the children followed, their fingers trembling, then growing steadier, their awkward motions becoming a chain of signs. And then the miracle came. All 3 laughed together, a laugh without sound, yet louder than any noise in the world. The door swung open. William appeared. His dark suit still bore the creases of the long morning meeting, his tie slightly loose, his face etched with fatigue. He froze for a few seconds, unable to believe what he saw. His children, usually as cold as little ghosts, now laughing, now alive. But instead of letting his heart touch the miracle, he tightened his grip on his briefcase handle, his voice low and sharp. "Stop." The word froze the kitchen. The children immediately pulled their hands back, their eyes dimming like candles snuffed out. Imani turned her head, breath quick, but she stayed calm. She knew the moment had been real, something no one could erase. William stepped forward, placing his hand on the table, his gaze tense. In his mind was only one thought: sign language would chain his children to the label of different, make them objects of pity. He believed only cochlear implants, the very technology his own corporation had developed, could give them a normal life. Imani said nothing. She only bowed her head and quietly retrieved her phone. But in her eyes, the fire still burned, the fire William had not dared to look at. He turned away, leaving the kitchen to silence. But this silence was different. It was no longer absolute. In the children's minds lingered the signs they had just learned, like a secret code. They glanced at each other, small hands trembling, repeating one little sign Imani had taught them: happy. Standing in the hallway, William cast a glance back. Inside him, a question kept pounding. Had he just extinguished a miracle, or was he blocking the very path that could save his family? All right then, my dear viewers, if you find this story captivating, drop a comment with the number 1 or simply say, "I'm still here," to keep listening. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the massive glass windows of the Boston high-rise where Whitmore Biotech was headquartered. Inside the walnut-paneled boardroom, William sat at the head of the table, steam still rising from his coffee, a growth chart projected behind him. But no one paid attention to the numbers. Every board member's eyes were fixed on 3 photos splashed across the front page of the Boston Globe. William leading his 3 children to the car with a bold headline, "CEO turns his children into living experiments?" The sharp tap of a shareholder's pen cut through the silence. The elderly man leaned forward, a half smile tugging at his lips. "William, the public isn't waiting for clinical results. All they see are 3 deaf children and a powerful father forcing them to wear devices made by his own company." His words thickened the air in the room. William kept his face calm, but inside, a storm raged. He remembered Emily's eyes glowing as she signed with Imani the night before. That memory kept slipping into the cracks of his reasoning. He sipped his coffee, but the bitterness seemed endless. Elsewhere, the New York Times ran a commentary. Is this humanitarian science or simply a display of power? Images of the Whitmore family became fodder for cafe chatter, social media debates, and airport lounge gossip. Some pitied the children, while others condemned William as a man buying normalcy with money. That evening, when he returned to the estate, he hadn't even removed his coat before he saw his elderly mother waiting in the living room. She was the matriarchal figure of the family, her silver hair pinned neatly, pearls gleaming under the chandelier. She didn't need to raise her voice. A single glance was enough to make William feel 12 years old again. "You are turning this family into a joke," she said softly, but her tone cut like a blade. "Those children are our chance to prove our technology's greatness. Don't let a few meaningless hand waves ruin everything." William clenched the handle of his briefcase, his eyes on the floor. To her, sign language was a symbol of failure, while cochlear implants were the only path to normal. Her words echoed the same voice that rang in his head each time he signed a new contract. Don't be weak. Don't let emotions ruin strategy. Imani slipped quietly into the room, setting a tray of tea on the table. No one thanked her, but William caught the tension flashing in her eyes. She walked away, shoulders stiff, as if she wanted to shout that the matriarch was wrong. William let out a faint, bitter laugh, a hollow smile caught between 2 opposing worlds. One of family imposition, the other of fragile warmth Imani had sown in his children. The next day in his office, William opened his email. Shareholders had forwarded links to late-night talk shows mocking him. One cartoon even depicted him as Frankenstein, implanting devices into his children's heads. He chuckled briefly, not from amusement, but from a bitterness so deep it left no room for any other feeling. Reporters swarmed outside the mansion gates. Cars idled out front, cameras zooming in on the small silhouettes of his children. Every step they took became a headline, 3 silent children before a sea of cameras. The millionaire father had suddenly become the villain in his own life story. That night, as he walked down the long hallway, William paused before a door left slightly ajar. Inside, Imani sat cross-legged on the floor with the children, a nightlight casting a warm glow. The 3 little ones signed tentative gestures, their faces radiant as if they had uncovered treasure. William clenched his fist, his face faltering. He knew that if he allowed those gestures to continue, everything would slip out of his control, his family, his company, his reputation. He turned away, his footsteps heavy as stone. But the haunting question echoed inside him. Was he protecting his children, or only protecting his own image? And before we continue with the rest of the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Oh, and leave a comment below to let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. The nightlight in the children's room cast a pale golden glow, soft as milk. Outside the window, Boston had already sunk into darkness, only streaks of car lights flashing across the cobblestone street. Imani quietly gathered the scattered puzzle pieces from the carpet, her steps careful not to wake the triplets. But when she opened the bottom drawer of the small cabinet, she froze. An old photograph, its edges frayed, lay hidden among scribbled sheets of paper. In the picture was a thin girl with her hair tied high, standing beside a woman with a gentle smile. Both of them held their hands up in a familiar triangle, "I love you" in sign language. The child's eyes glowed with simple happiness. That child was Imani. For a moment, her throat tightened. Memories surged back like a film rewinding. Afternoons in their Bronx apartment, her deaf mother patiently teaching her every sign. Evenings when mother and daughter used their hands to tell fairy tales instead of words, and then the days when the hospital became their second home as her mother battled illness. When her mother died, Imani's world collapsed. She was only 16, and the sudden silence was no longer a choice. It was a void that swallowed everything. She withdrew, rejected it all, even the sign language that had once been their bond. Every night she curled into herself in the dark, just wishing someone could hear her heartbeat. Then, one cold morning, she passed by a small park near school. On a bench, a group of young people were laughing not with voices, but with their hands dancing. It was the Deaf Student Club from the nearby university. They invited her to join, and for the first time in months, Imani lifted her hand to sign a single word, "Hello." In that instant, it felt as if her whole body had been unlocked. From then on, sign language was no longer just a memory of her mother, it was her lifeline. It pulled her back from the edge of despair, gave her a community, a reason to smile. She joined ASL performances, and her friends even teased her as the best storyteller with hands. Slowly, her gentle humor returned. Imani learned how to turn a sad story into a small joke, how to make someone laugh with a playful sign. Now, living in the cold mansion of the Whitmore family, all those memories became a hidden weapon. She knew what it felt like to be seen as different, to have your language dismissed. And because of that, she couldn't bear to watch the triplets live forever inside the emptiness she had once endured. One night, as the children drifted in and out of sleep, Imani sat beside them and lifted her hand. She signed slowly, clearly. Hands can talk, even when voices can't. Emily cracked her eyes open, her tiny fingers trembling as she repeated the motion. Her twin brothers leaned closer, their fingers reaching into the air, clumsy but determined. In that moment, Imani felt the circle of memory close. From the girl who had once lost everything, she had now become a bridge for three small souls. She knew William would fiercely oppose it. He had never seen this language as a treasure, only as a mark of failure. But Imani could not step back. To her, every sign was a breath, proof that difference could become strength. The photo in the drawer was put back, no longer hidden. It remained there as a reminder. Fight not only for the three children, but for herself, and for the mother who had once taught her to love with her hands. And at the end of the dark hallway, someone was standing still. William, on his way back to his study, had happened to glimpse Imani and the children signing together. He didn't step inside, only lingered in the shadows, his eyes conflicted. Perhaps for the first time he wondered, was this language truly a danger? Or was it the very key he had long forgotten? Noon sunlight poured through the tall glass windows of the study, laying streaks of dusty light across the bookshelves. After a tense online meeting, William loosened his tie and sank into his familiar leather chair. The wind outside stirred the white curtains. He reached into an old drawer for some documents, but instead, a family album slipped out, falling softly to the floor. He bent to pick it up, and between its yellowed pages, a thin envelope slid free. The edges were worn, the handwriting delicate, achingly familiar. Lauren. William froze. He tore open the seal, the faint scent of old paper carrying a trace of pollen, the fragrance Lauren had always loved. Slanted letters appeared, each word like a sob echoing from the past. If our children cannot hear, don't force them to become like others. Let them see love in your eyes and in your hands. William's vision blurred. The family photos spread open before him seemed to quiver, as if Lauren were smiling softly from within the frames. He remembered her hands brushing the children's hair, her palm resting over his in those long hospital nights. Lauren had always believed that love didn't need to be heard, it only needed to be felt. Clutching the letter, William leaned back, his breath uneven. For so long he had convinced himself that technology was the only key. But these words cut through the armor of logic, exposing a fear he had never dared to admit. The fear that if he couldn't fix the children, he would lose the last trace of Lauren. From the hallway came the sound of silent laughter, the rustle of small hands shaping clumsy signs under Imani's patient guidance. William rose and moved to the window. Below, in the garden, Imani sat on the grass with the triplets. The four of them waved their hands like they were sharing some secret magic. For a fleeting instant, his lips curved upward, almost a smile, but he quickly turned away, as if afraid to catch himself in the act. Back at his desk, he folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his vest pocket. In that moment, he was no longer the cold CEO of a corporation, but a widowed husband, a father torn between two worlds, technology and love. The letter was a stone dropped into his mind's still water, ripples spreading outward without end. That night, as the mansion fell into silence, William opened his laptop to draft a report for the board, but the numbers and charts dissolved, replaced by Lauren's face, her gentle smile, her speaking eyes. He typed a few lines, then deleted them. Slumping back, he pulled out the letter and laid it beside the keyboard. His hand trembled as, for the first time, he formed a simple sign, love. Clumsy, stiff, but enough for him to feel that hands could speak, even when lips stayed shut. He let out a rough laugh, half choked with tears. No one saw, only the cold blue glow of the laptop revealed his weary face. But in that instant, William knew. The seed of change had taken root. Would he have the courage to cross the threshold from cold reason to the simple love Lauren had left behind? All right then, my dear viewers, if you find this story moving, drop a comment with the number 1 or simply say, I'm still here to keep listening. An autumn morning, the Boston sky was so clear it seemed the clouds hung just above the rows of crimson maples. The gates of the Massachusetts School for the Deaf opened. Children hurried in with colorful backpacks, while Imani quietly held the hands of the Whitmore triplets. They wore the same uniforms as their classmates, yet their eyes remained hesitant, half eager, half afraid. The classroom was flooded with light. On the walls hung drawings made of signs, hands spread into wings, ASL letters curved into the shape of a heart. The teacher stood at the front, face radiant, hands moving constantly to begin the evaluation. The children laughed and signed back no sound, but a chorus of joy in silence. The Whitmore triplets sat curled in the back row. Imani gave a gentle nod of encouragement. Shy little Emily raised her hand and signed hello. Immediately, a girl across the room signed back, her smile glowing as if to welcome a new friend. The twin brothers exchanged a glance, then tried to. Suddenly, the unfamiliar room felt closer, warmer. The door burst open. William filled the frame, tall, imposing. In a black suit, his gaze sharp with anger, his breath heavy. The room froze. Imani stood, her heart racing, but too late to stop him. He had found where she had brought the children. William advanced, each step of his shoes hitting the wooden floor like a gavel. He opened his mouth, but in that moment, the 3 children turned toward him. Without a word, only with their small hands, they signed a single word, Dad. The whole class held its breath. William's eyes wavered. For an instant, he saw Lauren's letter again, his wife's smile as she cradled the babies in her arms. His chest tightened, his breath shallow. The walls of logic he had built began to crack. He stood frozen, his hands heavy at his sides. The children kept signing, their eyes shining, as if pleading, see us with your hands. William's hands trembled, each finger stiff, weighted by the past. Slowly, haltingly, he lifted them, mirroring the sign his children had made. Dad. Silence draped the room. For a moment, time itself seemed to stop. Then, like a dam breaking, the triplets rushed forward, tears streaming, throwing their arms around him. William pulled them into his chest, for the first time not hiding his weakness. The entire class erupted into applause, not a thunder of sound, but a wave of hands fluttering in the air. A signature gesture of the deaf community, simple yet piercingly moving. William looked up and saw dozens of young faces shining, tiny hands moving in rhythm, cheering. And in that moment he understood. This was not a difference to conceal, but a whole world unfolding before him. Tears slid down his cheeks, mingling with a rare smile. He kissed each child's hair, a late apology. Beside him, Imani placed a hand over her heart, feeling her own pulse merge with the rhythm of the room. Outside, maple leaves rustled. A breeze swept through the window, lifting notebook pages into the air, as if to mark the beginning of change unstoppable, undeniable. Yet even as his heart opened, William shivered. He knew that beyond these red brick walls, the world of headlines, shareholders, and family legacy still waited, eyes sharpened with judgment. Would this fragile moment be strong enough to withstand the weight of an empire pressing in from outside? The morning after the school event, reporters crowded the gates of the Whitmore estate, microphones raised, cameras flashing. On the lobby television screens, the viral clip replayed again and again. William, CEO of America's largest medical corporation, signing dad to his 3 deaf children for the first time. The image had moved millions of hearts, but it also ignited a storm not easily quelled. Inside the corporate boardroom, the air was thick as gunpowder. Red charts plunged downward on the massive screen. An elderly shareholder slammed his hand on the table, glasses rattling. We've invested billions into the cochlear implant project, and now our own chairman has rejected that technology before the entire world? Other faces nodded grimly, all eyes turning to William at the head of the table. He sat in his dark suit, calm in posture, his back straight like a man who had decided not to retreat. He said nothing, letting the barrage of accusations wash over him. In his mind still echoed the silent applause from the school yesterday, the sight of dozens of hands waving in rhythm like a chorus of encouragement. That evening, in the vast living room beneath a crystal chandelier's cold glow, his mother sat regally on her high-backed chair, pearls shining like the emblem of the family's power. Her voice was low, yet sharp. "You are dragging this family into the mud. Sign language will turn my grandchildren into outsiders and the company into a farce." William stood across from her, his hand resting on a chair's back, his face etched with fatigue but his eyes strangely bright. "They are not outsiders. They have a language, a culture, a future." He drew in a breath, then declared firmly, "I choose to stand with them." The moment carved a chasm between generations and worldviews. His mother gripped her cane tighter, fury burning in her eyes. But William did not waver. He had tasted emptiness long enough to know that losing them again would mean losing everything. News on social media erupted. The deaf community hailed him as an unexpected symbol, with the hashtag #dad signs spreading across Twitter and Instagram. Yet, in the financial world, he was branded a traitor to shareholders. Talk shows mocked him. One even staged a parody, sketching William as a blind knight raising his shield against an entire city. He let out a rough laugh when he saw it, but the taste was bitter. In the kitchen, Imani sat with the children, teaching them new words and signs: courage, hope, family. Their silent laughter filled the air, echoing down the hall. William stopped at the doorway, his eyes softening. For a fleeting moment, all the accusations and ridicule outside seemed to dissolve. Then his phone buzzed. The caller ID, the company's legal office. Cold words appeared. The board had scheduled a vote of no confidence. His career, his fortune, the empire he had built over 30 years, everything could collapse in a single meeting. William sat down, his fingers brushing the letter from Lauren he always kept in his pocket. The ink-smudged line whispered to him again, "Let them see love through your hands." He looked up, eyes resolute. For the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of losing an empire. He feared only one thing: losing the chance to walk beside his children. But could love and courage truly withstand the weight of a ruthless financial machine and a century-old family dynasty? You're still here with me, aren't you, my dear viewers? Take a moment to breathe, maybe sip a glass of water, and stay with the story. If you're finding this journey moving, drop a 1 in the comments, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. A spring morning transformed the Whitmore Estates garden. No longer hushed, it pulsed with footsteps, fluttering hands, and silent laughter. Beneath blooming magnolia trees, dozens of children sat in a circle, small fingers tracing letters in ASL. At the center stood Imani, her gaze patient, her presence gentle. Nearby, a team of young engineers from William's company installed new devices, screens translating signs into text, headsets vibrating in rhythm with spoken words. From a distance, William watched. His sleeves were rolled up, his air no longer that of a cold CEO, but of a father savoring peace. He had made a bold decision to transform his estate into Boston's first deaf-friendly center, a place where sign language and supportive technology would coexist, not cancel each other out. The media responded quickly. From the New York Times to small independent bloggers, headlines declared this a historic turning point: coexistence instead of replacement. One photo spread across the internet: William kneeling, signing welcome to a young deaf girl arriving at the center. The hashtag number hands and hearts began trending, slowly washing away the storm of criticism that had surrounded him. In the kitchen, as she carried out trays of baked goods for the children, Imani could not hide her smile. She remembered the early days, when William slammed every door shut, his eyes taut with strain. Now the same man clumsily signed with his children, each stiff gesture carrying a love that could not be concealed. By afternoon, William sat on a wooden bench in the garden. The triplets dashed around, hair flying, hands signing quickly as they narrated their imagined adventures. Imani joined in, adding playful gestures that sent them into fits of laughter. William's eyes shimmered. In their silent joy, he caught a fleeting glimpse of Lauren, the wife he had lost. Somehow, she was still here, folded into the sunlight, alive in the small hands moving through the air. The serenity did not last. Engines roared at the gates. Luxury cars rolled to a stop, doors opening to release groups of lawyers in black suits, their eyes cold, hands clutching thick binders. They had been sent by the board, a clear signal that a legal war was about to begin. Imani's face tightened. Her hands unconsciously signed a small prayer. The children fell still, staring at the gates with curiosity and unease. William rose, shoulders square, eyes burning bright. He knew the storm ahead would be brutal. Shareholders, media, his own family legacy all waiting to test him once more. But this time he had already chosen his side. He stepped forward, then paused to turn back. Raising his hand, he signed a single word: together. The children signed it back, their radiant smiles scattering the shadows. The frame froze on that moment, family bound, love and language woven as one. Yet, beyond the gates, the lawyers stood waiting. Would this fragile bond prove strong enough to resist the cold machinery of power advancing toward them? Or was this only the beginning of an even fiercer battle? The evening light settled over the Whitmore garden, where the three children still played, their small hands weaving silent stories of their own. William sat quietly, Imani beside him, and in that moment the weight of past sorrows seemed to ease. They were no longer a broken family, but one learning to speak in a different tongue, the language of love and patience. Yet beyond the iron gates, the sleek cars of the lawyers still waited. The legal battle, the clash between heart and profit, between the future of three children and the might of a billion-dollar empire lingered close. Would William have the strength to hold fast to his promise? Could love and sign language overcome the barriers of society, finance, and centuries of prejudice? The answer could only come in the next chapter of this story. The lesson the Whitmore family offers is clear. Strength is not found in forcing someone to be normal by society's standards, but in choosing to kneel, to sit eye to eye, and to listen with your whole heart. Sometimes, hands can speak more than words, and a silent smile can save a soul. If you're watching this story anywhere across America, whether in a small apartment in New York, a quiet home in Texas, or along the distant shores of California, ask yourself, is there someone in your family waiting to be heard in a different way? Don't hesitate to learn how to sign with your heart, because perhaps that is the only thing strong enough to heal. Share this story with your loved ones and friends across the country. Leave a comment below, tell us what you think, and whether you want to walk with the Whitmore family into part 2, where the battle has only just begun. Because sometimes, your voice and your presence today may become the extension of tomorrow's miracle.